Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 116 of the Home Games Podcast. I'm Yazeed, and this is Joseph.
Hello, I am Joseph, and today is September 13th, 2022. I have one update for this episode, and it is that I made Pong, and the code review is code reviewed by Yazeed, which we will talk about this episode. And that's pretty much my whole update. So we'll probably do like a not so deep dive, but kind of half deep dive into Pong. Hopefully be a short episode.
Yeah, I actually want to start with the precursor to Pong, which is the path function in the new physics object of Squish. I'll have to comment on there basically like, hey, in the future, we want to add like acceleration or something to this. But I do think it's actually kind of an interesting approach where you like build these steps of like where something would be. And like you basically are building like a trajectory model.
Yeah, that sounds like fancy boy stuff. All I was really trying to do is say, hey, I'm really just trying to get a ball to move. And it's like I was saying in the last episode that, we've had a conversation before about like pure functions and side effects and stuff. And so a previous version of me would have probably written a utility that, given a game node, will move the game node. And this thing is just given a starting point and an end point. Give me every point on the path between them if I had this X and Y velocity. And I'm not a physics person by any means at all. Got a 22% on my physics exam in college, which was pretty good, actually. Yeah, it was actually just average. I think it was 24 was the average. But yeah, like acceleration, I'm sure would be cool too. I mean, it seems like that seems like it'd be useful at some point. But yeah, no, I just wanted something dead simple. Give me a path from here to here, and all that actually is increment the X and Y values by your X and Y velocity until you hit the upper thing. It's a very simple loop. It's not physics. It's kind of fake physics, which is actually how I also did the bouncing stuff, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, that would be cool at some point, I guess.
Yeah, I actually, part of why I think it's interesting, because I don't know if you know this, but people are very good at building trajectory models. Which is why we're actually quite good at throwing and catching stuff. And so it's like a very, I don't want to say primitive because that comes like a negative connotation, but it is like an incredibly like primal part of a human to be like, I need to know where something's gonna be. So I kind of like it, like just for like my own nerd reasons, but I'm kind of into it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But I've one of my favorite things to do is to figure out some shit that I think I understand and then realize that I did it totally wrong, but it kind of works. You know, it's kind of like it's like, I don't know, it's my wrong understanding of things, but I get to where I'm going. So it's like, does it really matter? You know, it's fun for me.
That's a very philosophical question.
I
I do think that maybe adding in acceleration to it would be a good idea now since it's fresh. But I mean, we're not going to need it for Pong. But I do like the utility. I think knowing the trajectory of something is probably going to be more valuable than just moving a thing, if that makes sense. Because you can do a lot more with it. Knowing like the full path it's going to take, like you can know what's going to stop it. Things like that. It's kind of into it. Especially, this is like a minor thing, but I was thinking about because we have control over the end point and the start point, you could build like sets of trajectories that get like smaller or larger, basically. And so like things can change trajectory a little bit over time. So you can like slowly like bend things if you needed to.
Yeah, see, that sounds mathy, which I'm already kind of not there with it, you know. I'm just like, I don't know, go X, right and up, or left and down, you know. Caveman.
I was also this is like another follow-up question, but like the inverse of the trajectory function is swiping and momentum from the last episode.
The inverse. So you're saying, given a set of coordinates that someone has traveled through, you can tell basically their velocity.
You can tell their velocity, acceleration, start point, end point, all that stuff. Yeah.
True. That's I guess that would be how I would do swiping. For people who are unfamiliar with what we're talking about, basically just the simple idea of a swipe on an iPhone. How do we track that? Or any phone, but iPhones are the only real phones. So, if we were able to track that kind of swipe motion and kind of read it as a swipe as opposed to drawing a line, you need to know the speed that they did that with and the distance and all that kind of shit. It's all math. One of my least favorite parts of computers is that they're all math, but that is true. I actually kind of did something similar for the bouncing logic. The bouncing logic in Pong, where if it hits a paddle, then it'll bounce off, and if it hits a wall, it'll bounce off. There's like you said, it's a very primal human thing, and the way I was testing it when I was originally trying to do math, like a real math version of it, and there's something very wrong about seeing the ball go like this from left, like from it's going right up towards the top wall, and then it bounces and it comes right back the same way. So it's like instead of it looks so fucked. And you're just like, oh my god, my math is wrong. And then it's just like so that's what I'm saying. Like the very human way of, okay, that looks fucked. Let me add an if statement here for if this thing happens, then I'm gonna bounce it the other way. Okay, well now it bounces just right back in a mirror. And so basically I kind of pieced together, that looks fucked, let me fix it, that looks fucked, let me fix it, until I had a fake version of physics in the game that totally works. So it's kind of, again, it's like a very fun way of building things because I have no idea what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty interesting. I have yet to see it bounces back onto itself on the same trajectory, either in real life or in Sponge. So, you did a pretty good job.
Thank you. Yeah, so what I was thinking originally when I said, I think 2 weeks ago, that everything is a circle, and I had this thought during the episode that everything was a circle. My thinking, in better words, was that this rectangle that you're looking at, this kind of playing space that you're looking at, can basically have this ellipse over it, not a circle exactly because it's a rectangle. So it's this thing, and I just remember from math that you can build lines in a circle and then look at the arc between them and then do like angles and shit. That's basically my knowledge of math, angles and shit. And so I tried doing that with, like I said, the Sokotoa thing, which I only know and remember because of Squidward. And okay, so if I have this line like this, and I can kind of infer that there would be a line like this, which I actually wanted to go to follow. And then all of this is basically just a triangle. I can figure out my angles and whatever. And I got all that working in the actual absolute values of where I needed to go. What was wrong was my direction. Like I wasn't figuring that out correctly. And so instead of trying to figure it out correctly, that's when I scrapped all the math and just turned it into like 8 nested if statements. So here we are with working functional Pong.
I bet in actual Pong they also didn't do the math. I'll just point that out.
I would bet that. I felt like whoever invented Pong in that moment, where I felt like the trick, because you always read about old programming stuff where it's like, we only had room for 12 characters in the whole game, and so we had to do some crazy shit to make this work. So I felt like that, except it was not as nearly as impressive. It was just very lazy, but those are kind of the same thing sometimes.
Yeah, my favorite one of those is like on the original Mario. It's not the original, like the very first Mario, like the first Super Mario game. The clouds and the bushes were the same thing, just recolored.
I love that kind of stuff.
That's crazy. Very smart.
Yeah, there's a crazy thing, I think, in Doom where because of the way that the physics work, they basically guess at some points because it's too hard to calculate the real thing, and because those guesses are wrong very, very few times, you'll get the weird things where someone can just move through a wall when they figure out shit consistently, where it's like, if I at this exact moment push forward through this, I can go through the wall because the math that checks that is faking it. So Very cool. I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. I think it's interesting. One thing about faking it in my version of Pong that I think is kind of fun, and I think is ultimately like a fun feature. So if you've ever played Pong, it feels like, I don't know if this is really the case, but it feels like the momentum that you smack the ball with kind of translates into the ball. So if the ball is coming like this and you kind of move up while you make contact, that upward velocity will kind of translate over. You'll move faster in the upward direction. That stuff is cool as shit, and I didn't want to build it. So what I did was when the ball hits a paddle, it'll basically just invert the X, right? If I'm going from left to right or right to left. But then it'll randomly make a Y velocity in addition. So it'll just fucking smack somewhere crazy when you hit it, because otherwise it would just be really boring. You could have a scenario where you have a paddle, and if it hits if it just hits it at all, it just mirrors back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There's no game until someone moves, which I think sucks. So you get this really chaotic, crazy thing where if you have two people just holding on the paddle and they're just playing against each other, and the shit is going crazy, and it's just very hectic and very nuts, which at the end of the day is exactly what I was trying to build with this thing, because I wanted to see a hectic, fast-moving game in home games, and if it worked. And I don't know if you tested it out yourself or whatever, or just looked at the code, but like that shit goes. It runs, and it goes fast, and it doesn't really chug crazy. It looks a little chunky visually, but I think that's mostly just because of the way I make them move, not because of an actual limitation. So yeah, I was impressed at the speed of that whole thing.
Yeah, when you demoed it to me, even I was like, damn, that's like a game.
Yeah.
Because it is like a game. It moves pretty well.
Totally. And the thing of I don't know if you watched the episode or if we talked about the swing a zoo girl thing, and I had the idea of launching a girl with a swing into the zoo or whatever. You can make that now with that trajectory stuff, and like you were saying, if you have an acceleration, you can basically make complex paths and games like simple games where a thing goes from here, travels over here, and knocks into shit. Or you check if she bypassed the line, so she's in the zoo. You can do those kind of simple things now that we have just this very basic concept of physics in the engine. So
we could make Angry Birds.
Yeah, it's basically what I'm thinking when I say the whole swinging into the zoo thing. It's Angry Birds, but without the impact on the other side. It's just, can you make the right trajectory to get it to hit this specific point?
Should we play Flash games when you were younger?
Fuck yeah.
There was a Flash game that was that, where you were just trying to like get the trajectory to like get to land in like the little basket or whatever. I think you're like shooting an apple or something like that with a slingshot. What is the idea?
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I'm familiar with that specific game, but yeah, I mean, that sounds...
I don't know. We're talking about a game that I played like 25 years ago, so just straight up, I might not be remembering it correctly.
But yeah, no, my Flash games were like... the two that stick out in my mind were Britney Spears on Newgrounds, where you threw spears at Britney Spears, and then Interactive Buddy, where it was just like a little gray ball man that you would smack around and light him on fire and shit. I guess those are kind of like sadistic now that I think about it, right? Both of those games. Yeah, well.
Mine was a slingshot and an apple and trying to land it in a basket. And you're like, yeah, you throw spears at Britney Spears.
That one was wild to me because I was like 4 and my cousin just showed me Newgrounds. It was like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing ever. There's this pixelated blood in this computer game,
Jesus. But, I think I played mine on like coolmath.com or whatever.
Rather, Cool Math for Kids. That was my absolute jam.
Yeah.
Did you ever play the one where you're I think it's Gassy Gary? Your name is Gary and you're in a pool, like way deep in the pool, like below everybody's feet, swimming left and right, and you're just trying to fart and these like bubbles come up to the top and you try to hit people. We could build that kind of stuff. We have Cool Math for Kids like level games right now in home games, which I think is pretty cool.
I really do like how slowly we're progressing through like the eras of games with home games. It started with like arcade games with like Frogger, and now like Pong, and it's gonna get to like now we're at like Flash game level approximately.
Hell yeah, dude, we're gonna have
continue to progress further. My biggest fear is that home games becomes the new Flash games. If I'm honest with you.
If browsers remove support for JavaScript, then well, even then we can just make a whole other client, right? Like the beauty of this whole thing. I don't think JavaScript will ever die, so I hope that we are not the next Flash games.
No, what I mean by that is like the ubiquity of Flash games and how they were everywhere for a while, and some of them were real shitty, and some of them were like pretty cool.
But isn't that the goal? To be everywhere and shitty and cool?
Yeah, but I think Flash games is like a real stigma of eventually just becoming porn games.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. To me, porn games are just like a side effect of winning. You know what I mean? There's anybody making porn out of anything is success. Like Family Guy must be one of the most popular shows ever because they're always showing the fucking ad where they're all fucking. The cartoons them are fucking, you know? Like they're making porn out of it, so it must be the best. It's incredibly popular. You know what I mean?
No. What are you talking about? I feel like tonight we've been talking past each other sometimes. I don't know what you're saying to me right now.
If someone is making porn with your stuff.
Oh, no, I followed that piece.
Made great stuff.
I don't know what you were talking about, Family Guy.
It's the one ad on every website ever where it's like a fucking orgy. Have you ever been on the internet, dude? Anyway, it's porn. Porn is very popular on the internet.
Everywhere. I don't see shit.
Porn is very popular on the internet is all I'm saying.
That's
and
true.
So if there's porn with home games, it's kind of just what it is. You know, you got to deal with it and it'll be cool.
That's true. We are up against some more highly technically advanced porn making machines, so we'll have to really overcome some hurdles. But I bet there is like a crowd of people from like probably like around our age bracket that are like, oh yeah, I remember Flash games and what they were like. So
yeah, I'm sure. Has that stuff just been lost to time basically, or is it in some way playable still? Anything Flash?
I don't know at all, actually. I haven't tried to play a Flash game in a very long time.
Yeah.
I think people still make Flash animations, but then they like record it and then just like put it up as like a GIF instead. I've seen either that or people make stuff that looks like it's from Flash. Like I've seen some people make like memes and stuff that look like they're ancient Flash things, but I know for sure they can't be because they reference like modern stuff.
Well, that's another thing too is the aesthetic of all that kind of stuff. The way it felt is kind of unique to it or whatever. You know, it'd be cool if one day someone's like, man, remember home games Pong? The way it moved, the way it randomly smacked in the Y direction. That shit was so cool. You know? I want to be remembered in that way. We were just talking before the episode about making an impact, you know? Hopefully it's not just like a bunch of JavaScript we write and then it's gone.
That is true. I was going to leave a question on there like what is the purpose of this? So I'm glad you explained why it does that.
Wait, why what?
Why it chooses why the randomness for the Y direction. I was like, this is interesting. My original thought was that it was important for just like the fun of the game, but it seems like this is critical to your vision of the game too. So,
well, yeah, I mean, the fun of the game I think comes from that because like I said, there's no the math isn't real enough to make sense unless you basically randomize it for fun. If I really wanted to make it make sense, I would do the momentum thing from Pong, where it's like if the previous position of the paddle was lower than what it is now when it hits, then I would try to, figure out that Y velocity from the thing, translate it to the ball, look at something like did it hit on the bottom part of the paddle or the top of the paddle, and maybe do something different there. I don't know.
I don't know if Pong ever cared about you moving your paddle. I thought it was only on what part of the paddle it hit. And
Maybe
I thought it
that's-
was just like a folklore type of story that if you move your paddle correctly, you can like put spin on the ball, basically.
That's like in Pokemon Red or whatever. Kids would say, "Oh, if you hold A and B down while you're catching a Pokemon, it'll help." And it's just like, I believe you, man. So I did that shit for 10 years. You know, that stuff is cool.
Yeah.
But no, how about I go through the code, I remove the random thing, I fake it with the top and bottom, and then we just tell everybody it's advanced math. And then they'll be like, "Fuck these guys! I'm gonna prove them wrong." And then they have to read our code, and then boom, they're part of the community. That's how we get people just straight up lying.
There we go.
Yeah.
What we need to do is we need to make a game that the speedrunning community can get into, and then we've made it. That's when I know we've made it, when people start trying to speedrun a home games game. Because that's when people look through like the engine and like what's possible with the engine and stuff like that. And that's when I know like they'll push our engine to like beyond the limits, because they're like looking for points where you can like break it. So like they're looking for breakages and like weak spots in there. So like that's like the real stress test, when speedrunners get their hands on home games.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I've never really thought about it, but if a game is purely playable over a network, does a speedrunner even care? Because there's so much of a variable. Like, my run won't be the same as your run. If my inputs are the same as yours, there's this network latency that'll always be a factor, and I just won't even try it.
I don't know. I mean, like, World of Warcraft had a speed run for who could hit level 60 first. And that has network variance.
That's true, but I guess that stuff is more like, I've really never played World of Warcraft much.
That's for the best, dude.
And so, forgive me for oversimplifying, but that game is clicking on shit and then waiting. Mm-hmm. So there's not a whole lot of active engage. Like, speedrunning World of Warcraft seems stupid as fuck to me, I guess is what I'm saying. You should speedrun whatever, Zombies Ate My Neighbors or whatever the hell. That shit, or like Ghouls and Goblins. That shit is all just input and beat the thing faster.
Yeah. Like, Trackmania is a game that people speedrun quite a bit. And I know that Trackmania like is purpose built around speedrunning, basically, because it's like it was originally like a racing game, but now it's just like you're gonna absolutely tear my track apart in order to go as fast as possible. And so like people, there's like a way in the game. It's actually kind of cool. When I was learning about this, I was like, Joseph wanted to do this for home games with his like SVG thing, where it like they basically have a way of, it will hold on to all of the inputs during your run, and then you can validate it by basically like putting into this box, and the box like takes your run and like verifies that like you should have been where you were given like all the other inputs. And like in that way, like there's like a way of validating speedruns in Trackmania. And I was like, that's very similar to what Joseph was talking about, kind of, with like the SVG thing, and like even like a state being able to like, this is the outcome of that state. And it's like Trackmania has a way of doing that, but like given like the path of inputs, it like generates like the course and makes sure that you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be.
That's interesting. So it's basically, that's weird when you realize that you can play someone's run at any point based off of just the state of the game and the input that you knew at that time without knowing anything else about anything. Like, it's I want to say that's how kill cams or something similar in Call of Duty work. Like, I don't think it's recording the screen; it's playing input as it would have been at the state of the game at that time.
Mm-hmm. I think so too, cool. But I'm not 100% sure, because if it was recording, it would have to start recording when it's like the kill possibly gonna happen, and have to like track like and know that. I think probably most games have like a way of rolling back like that, though. Honestly, most games probably do, partially for like rollback in terms of like latency management. If you think about it, like the kill cam may not be something that they intentionally needed to write code for. They might have just had the like rollback of it, and they were like, well, you know, we have it. Might as well like do something cool with it, you know?
Totally. This is kind of off the topic, I guess. I don't even know what the topic is anymore, but I've been playing a lot of Gears of War lately, and one of the interesting things I've noticed there is, I think this network predictive thing that was invented, I think, for Quake a long time ago, is basically when you're walking forward in a game, the game can basically assume that you're going to keep walking forward. And so it'll kind of make assumptions on the network side that you're going to keep doing this and like start to predict things or whatever and whatever. And when you start to change that input, it'll obviously make different decisions. But the simple core thing of a networked game will predict that you will keep walking forward is the thing I'm talking about. And in Gears, there's network spikes all the time. And often what I'll see is, and the way people play in Gears is they'll just rush each other with shotguns. And it's basically just a timing thing. And so what happens consistently is I'll get lag spikes and someone will be walking, shoot and kill me. And then I'll see on my screen a very weird, just like they keep walking straight. Mm-hmm. But then the network will kind of catch up and then they'll actually be jumping way over there. But for a time, it was showing me the prediction of what this player was going to do and not the player's actual input, because in that moment, it didn't have the player's actual state. And I'm just like, well, if the fucking Microsoft-backed developer or whatever can't figure this shit out, I don't need to be that impressive. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just make some shitty whatever and it'll be fine. But I just think it's crazy when you think, because games are like magic until you realize like they're just a lot of probably band-aids and twigs in the back end, which is how everything I build ever is. So that's very comforting.
Very reassuring. Yeah. I honestly like, I think I've been more attentive to it in video games now, but just like sometimes you can like tell how people wrote the code to do stuff just from like how it functions. And you're like, oh, they have to have done it this way. There's no reasonable way they could have done this without doing it this way. So I think that's kind of cool. That's something that I've definitely taken from working on games. Just like an appreciation for that now.
Totally. It's like a thing of being it's just experience, right? When you can look at something and you're just like, well, I can kind of see how that works. It's cool to look at yourself and realize that you have that ability.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if you had anything else on Sponge, though.
Yeah, I want to change the name from Sponge to Pong. I think if we just change it to Pong and then Atari sues us, we'll probably be in a good spot because we'll have like some sort of recognition or whatever. Like I'll worry about getting sued when they sue me.
I wonder if they can sue us because we don't make any money from this anyway.
I guess it's not a commercial product. I don't know the specifics of what it takes to sue a person. All I know is people sue each other all the time. So
don't know either. I can tell you that I am not a lawyer.
I anal, dude. Gotta start off everything. I am not a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
It took me a while to get used to that acronym on the internet. I anal. Anyway, you have anything else before we wrap up?
No, I don't.
But yeah, I guess that's gonna be it. Pong is reviewed. You left a comment, but you didn't approve it. But like always, I will just approve it or merge it without your approval. And then
I can leave it. I was waiting until after the podcast in case we had anything we wanted to talk about on there or anything like that. But I'm good to approve it, or you can just merge it in. I have looked at it.
Yeah. Well, and then. I don't know. I just really just wanted to have your input on the math stuff, which I just thought was funny because I didn't do any math in the end. And and yeah, anyway, so that's there. I will make a video about the specifics of how it works, just to kind of show the physics and all that kind of stuff, and the sound specifically. I think that was another comment that you had about making sound a common utility.
Shoot, yeah, that's actually I should bring that up. Yeah, I asked basically like Joseph wrote a way of playing sound in Sponge Pong, and I was like, we should probably pull that out and make it like a utility because anyone who wants to play sound probably will need something that looks exactly like this function. But I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
Yeah, the way I do sound in it is pretty hacky, and I'll do a more in-depth thing on YouTube about it. But essentially, a sound is a game node that lives on the client and will live there until you tell it to stop. And so if you have a sound that is 1 second long and you don't remove it, it'll just play on a loop 1 second, 1 second over and over and over again, which is typically not what you want when you say play a sound just this 1 second audio clip, play it. Like you expect it to end at some point. And so the way I do that, because it's a node in the game tree, is I know how long the sound is going to be. So I make the thing, put it in the game tree. I know that every client's going to get that update. And then I do a set timeout of just around the time of the length of the audio, and then remove it from the tree. So it's like I put it in, and then just before it repeats, I take it out. But that's a guess. And it's over the network, so it's like maybe you didn't get the message, and maybe it didn't start playing when I think it did, and so it's a little shitty. But the general thing of I have a asset and I want to just play the sound, that's pretty. It's a good idea in the common tool. I just need to make it work better.
Is that affected by latency? At like any more than re-rendering is? Because like when you remove something from the tree, don't we like repaint? And so like that repaint is when it gets removed, but that happens on the server side and then it comes back. So isn't that just the flow of like going there and coming back always like not like it's obviously not like static number, but like it's fixed effectively with itself?
It's fixed with itself?
Like the time it takes to say like remove this node is the same time in theory it takes for it to like go to the server and then to come back. You know what I mean? Like that time is like fixed. It's like a constant number. Not fixed, but like a constant like T, time to talk to server or whatever. You know what I mean?
That would change though, even within every network. It's a slightly different. That's just basically you're talking about ping time from server to clients, right?
Yeah, but I'm saying like that's constant. Like for that ping, like the time it takes to there is like whatever the time it takes to there, and whatever time it takes is like that's like one flap of time. But like that is, shouldn't that line up approximate with like the previous one of like you starting it by adding it to the tree? Do you know what I mean?
I think I know what you're saying. Just the time it takes for a message to get from one to the next is generally consistent, and so we wouldn't have to worry about the latency in that case of playing sound. I think is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So yes, I think that makes sense. What I'm saying is if I say, hey, Yazeed, play this sound, and for whatever reason, it takes a little bit too long for you to get that message, and then 30 milliseconds later, I'm like, hey, Yazeed, stop playing that song, and say that, I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it's that consistent. I think lag spikes happen. Mm-hmm. And so you might get the message that says, okay, I'm going to start playing it right now. And then you start playing it basically 50 milliseconds after I think you should have started playing it. And I've already said stop by the time you start, and you're already processing the message to stop, so you play like a half of it. That might have been a shitty description, but basically I don't think it's consistent enough in that back and forth time to consistently guarantee that when I say start or stop a song, that every client on the network is going to start and stop within a generally like acceptable time. And that's just like a shitty way of the way that the implementation is at the moment. And so basically, yes, it would be nice to have a common way to play sound in a really like one line type of way, but the guts of how sound works it's not well defined enough for me to make it a common tool.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like maybe we need to add like duration or something to the media asset.
Totally. Yeah, we have this thing of start time, so you can basically slice into audio at a specific point. So for whatever insane reason, let's say you have all of your game audio in one MP3 at different parts of the song. So you just like, okay, well, the bounce sound is at the 3-minute mark. So I'm going to start at the 3-minute mark and then remove after 2 seconds. So I'm playing from 3 to 3:02. But having an end time or a thing so that way that the client can know from the time I started it, this is the time I'm going to end. So that's a good idea. But we don't have that at the moment.
Okay, I do like the idea of somebody doing like the old art asset where all of the art assets were like in one chunk and you just like quickly like copy and paste it off of there. But you know, work. I also can't stop thinking about just like a track that's just the Waluigi noise, but like slammed in on top of each other. So it's just like, whoa, like all that noise just like layered on top of one another. Yeah.
A big thick, hey.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that.
But yeah, no, that stuff needs some work. But besides that, Pong is pretty much done. And like I said, I'll make some stuff about that. And that will probably happen this coming weekend. And for the next episode, what are we doing? What's going on? Where are we in home games?
Hopefully by next episode, I will have an update with Square. So I still need to make the changes that we talked about last time on moving to set timeouts and set intervals instead of using the tick to move the NPCs. So hopefully by next episode, we'll have that to review and talk about, and just kind of like my findings from that experience of moving in that direction and like leveraging leveraging the actual like collision detector instead of the made up hacky one that I had made. And maybe we could play it and you could give me some feedback on like how you feel it is compared to the old version, just in terms of like, yeah, this is easier to understand what's going on, because like that is my overall point of redoing this. So hopefully that can get done, and then I don't know, I don't have another idea from that point.
Okay, I have a couple things. One, playing stuff on the episode I think might be good, because people like the episode with Synovia. People liked the previous episode with Synovia, where the ones that I do with Synovia are where we play games because I have something to show her. So we can make two inferences from that. One, people like Synovia, which obviously because she's great. Two, I think people are generally more attracted to just simple things like, what's the game, play the game, describe the game. You could talk about the progress, you could talk about the technical stuff a little bit, but I think for this thing, I think it'd be maybe if we have Square the next one, or just something to demo. If I had just like the random physics of Pong and we could just show that on the thing, talk about it happening here, because it's all very abstract. I'm talking about a fucking ellipse over a rectangle, drawing lines and inferring to arcs. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, if I could show you a thing, it'd be a lot easier. Anyway, I was just like a thought. I think it'd be cool to have like a demo of that thing, and then we could talk about it kind of in real time. And then what I want to do is, I talked previously about making public games, a game that you can actually play over the public internet. And so that would be, my current thinking is that I would have basically a public mirror of the game server that you're running on your network. You're kind of just beaming up your state to this thing, which is just broadcasting out to everybody else publicly, and some security shit on there to make sure people can't just join your game unless you want them to. So I will look into doing that, and then we can kind of see where we get to in 2 weeks with that.
That sounds pretty dope.
Cool. So I'm making a Pong video. You're doing Square shit that we will talk about, and then I'm doing public game shit that we will talk about.
Right on, buddy. Sounds great.
Sounds great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, our music was done by our friend Tynan. He is Nytan on Bandcamp. That is Nytan, Nytan. You can find us on Twitter at HomeGamesIO. We have a website, homegames.io. We have a contact form at the bottom of the page that you can use to send us a message with some feedback, questions, comments, concerns, fun game ideas, suggestions, anything you want, as long as it's text-based. That's all we got on that form. But anyway, thank you. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.